I was either in the 7th or 8th grade when this story took place. It was a hot, humid summer in the Midwest, and I lived in one of those true crime story towns. You know the type. Nothing bad happens here. Everyone knows everyone. The sun had just started to set when my softball game ended. Everyone was packing up to head home, and my little sister had already been driven home by her father. My coach had offered me a ride, but being an idiot and embarrassed to accept help, I turned him down. Again, the stupidest decision I could have made. In my head, my home was only across town, which wasn't that far. Besides, I had my bike, and I was already on thin ice when it came to leaving it at other people's houses. So once most people had left, I packed up my gear and began riding home. About 2 blocks in, as I rounded a corner, I noticed a beat-up car just behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it, small town and all. It wasn't like they were barreling toward me, but after another block, they were still following closely, and something told me that I should take a second look. When I glanced back, alarm bells had really started ringing. In the car behind me were 2 college-aged guys I didn't recognize. When I say that this town was tiny, I mean it. Our population was only 500, and I was pretty sure I should have seen those guys at least once before. Plus, the nearest college was a 40-minute drive away. But in an attempt to be friendly, I forced a smile as I looked at them. Neither one of them smiled back. They didn't even look annoyed at me being in front of them. No, they were just staring at me dead-eyed, as if they were fixated. At the time, I was a big fan of true crime, and I had heard once that if you think there's someone following you, you can try circling the block. If they're still there, chances are they're following you. I didn't have a phone back then, so I couldn't call anyone. Circling the block to calm my nerves seemed like the best option. I tried to rationalize it in my head. They're just trying to get home, Star. You're just being paranoid, that's all. So I decided to circle the block. I started by taking 2 left turns, maintaining a steady pace and not looking back. My reasoning was that if they didn't know I knew they were following me, they might not do anything. But even as I did this, I could feel my body shaking, my mind racing for anyone nearby whose house I could go to, someone who might actually answer the door. They kept pace behind me, never speeding up to get ahead of me, never honking or trying to push me out of the way. But as we rounded the 3rd corner, panic really started to sink in. I threw subtlety out the window and started pedaling as fast as I could, trying to make a full circle. As soon as I sped up, they did too. I'd spotted a house I recognized, but the chances of someone being home and answering, slim to none. It was a block away, and to this day, I've never pedaled faster in my life. As soon as I reached the yard, I practically jumped off my bike, leaving it in the grass. I glanced back at them one last time, and just as I feared, they had stopped at the same spot where I'd left my bike. Both of them were just staring at me, waiting. I chose the side door instead of the front, hoping it would be less obvious, but they could still see me. In that last moment of panic, I decided knocking wasn't a good idea. They'd realized this wasn't my house and someone might not be home. So instead, I flung open the screen door, trying to squeeze myself a little behind the main door to make it look like I was entering. I yelled, "Hello, I'm home!" hoping they'd hear me. I don't know how, but maybe by some miracle, as soon as I said that, they sped off right down the street, and I never saw them again. Once I saw they had left, I quickly ran around the back of the house, hiding behind the yard for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only about 15 minutes. That was before leaving my bike there and walking home, ducking behind trees and houses every time I heard a car. I made it home safe. I didn't cry, though my heart was pounding 1,000 times per minute. I told my father when I got home. He believed this experience was me making up excuses as to why I didn't bring home my bike, so I never reported it. I can only hope that this was a misunderstanding and that they've never tried this again. I was walking at night in a very safe neighborhood near downtown, as I often do. I was walking on a street when I saw a man just kind of mulling in the middle of an intersection in the neighborhood, which caught me off guard, I won't lie. He was wearing all black, but I didn't find him too suspicious because I often get anxious, so I just attributed it to that. He had a backpack and a front bag as well with 2 shoulder straps. I just assumed he was maybe someone coming home from work, though it was 1 a.m. so it was a bit silly to think that. Either that or he was homeless. A bit presumptuous because I live close to downtown, and it wouldn't be strange for someone to cut through my neighborhood as a shortcut to get farther north in the city. Instead of heading towards him, I instinctively turned left. I walk in loops around where I live because it's small, so that's what I did, walking back towards the intersection where the man had been, but he was nowhere to be seen now. Now, near the intersection there is a porta potty, I assume which is for construction at someone's house, which I began to walk by, when the man suddenly walked out in front of me and kept walking in front of me in the direction I was headed. It startled me a bit as I had my headphones in. I turned sharply up the north heading road of the intersection which leads to my house. As I almost made it past the house in the corner which would block the man and I's view of each other, I looked back and I noticed that he was moving back towards the porta potty where he had previously been. It really made me nervous at first, but I assumed him to be a homeless man who was using the porta potty, which was probably a bit silly. As I made it to the street and rounded the corner to where my house was, I turned back to peek down the road to see if the man was still lingering by the porta potty. As soon as I peered around, I then saw him moving in my direction. I quickly turned around and then briskly walked to my house. I hurried inside and headed to the 2nd floor to look out the window to see if I could spy on the man. As I looked at the slit that I had made at between the curtain and windowsill, I saw the man outside. He was stopped on the sidewalk. He then walked out into the road and began looking around as if he was looking for me. After turning, he gave one final quick turn and headed toward a main road by my house, which didn't necessarily lead to downtown. I know it was the same man as earlier because he was still sporting the backpack and front bag. This happened about an hour ago now, and I just had to know if I'm crazy or if it was weird. It's very possible he could have just been lost or something and wanted to ask me a question, as it is a very big city, but I didn't really get that impression despite him being unassuming because he was wearing 2 bags. A pretty dumb reason to label him unassuming, but at the moment, for some reason, it felt like it meant that he had a more important task at hand. Who knows though? This happened to me and my little brother several years ago when I was 13 and he was 4. For reference, I'm a female and am now 21 years old. I live in the same city but not the neighborhood mentioned in the story. I really love listening to these submitted stories, and I like to think they keep me very vigilant. Hopefully mine will do the same for you. I will give some context to our situation before getting into the actual story. This takes place in upstate New York in the neighborhood where me and my family lived in for 10 years. It wasn't the safest area of the city, but certainly not the worst either. My street was family friendly, most families and elderly couples living there. Turning off my street on one end of it led to a main street where most of the questionable activities occurred. Mostly drug use, car thefts, and every so often robberies at the corner stores and gas stations. Because of this, I never really walked on that main street without one of my parents. However, the opposite end of my street held more connected streets of only houses and a couple of random corner parks, which were generally pretty safe, with lots of people looking out for each other. I love to go on walks on that end of our street, and I never felt unsafe walking here. I often walked a couple of streets down to my childhood best friend's home by myself, never really experiencing anything weird besides being catcalled one time. Now to the actual story. It was a warm sunny afternoon when me and my little brother were left home alone by my parents. This was quite common, and they would usually pay me a little bit of money to babysit him. After eating lunch and playing with toys together, I decided to go on a walk, with me pushing him in the stroller. I got him ready with proper clothes and shoes on before heading to our garage together to get the stroller. It was a large black and red stroller with a big top handle that had a cup holder and a place to hold a cell phone. I set my phone there, screen up to display the time. I strapped him in and we began our walk. We got to the end of the driveway and then turned left, away from the main street and into the streets of houses. We laughed and looked around at the quiet street. Me and my brother had made simple jokes and talked about any cars that had passed by. We got to the first intersection and just turned left again, not crossing the street. We then started to approach the next intersection at the end of the stretch of sidewalk. We started coming up to a T intersection, allowing us to turn left or right. I planned to turn right to avoid the busy main street. Right as we arrived at the 3-point intersection, a vehicle came up to the stop sign. Not just any car, but the classic creepy white van that everyone imagines when thinking of a creepy white van. Now, I wasn't immediately on edge, but I did take note of the middle-aged white men sitting in the front, both looking straight at me and my brother. I remained friendly with a smile, waved for them to pass, signaling to not wait for us to cross. But they just stayed there, still staring, not waving at us or smiling back. I felt a bit awkward at this, and debated just crossing the street anyway. I tried again to wave them on, but still they stayed right where they were. At this point, I was just irritated, so I decided to just cross the street in front of the van and turn right to continue our walk. My brother was completely oblivious to anything going on as he had played with his little toy car in his seat. I quickly looked behind us, hoping they would still be at the stop sign looking for directions or something. But what I saw was much worse. They were now slowly following us at our walking pace, both men still intently staring at us without a smile. At this point, I'd started to walk faster, testing the situation that I already knew was not safe. They sped up as well, coming up right next to us in the street on our right. I immediately stopped walking and pushing, not taking my eyes away from their gaze to show confidence. They still blankly stared at us, but now I could see their mouths moving in conversation. I turned the stroller around immediately and started to pick up our pace, headed back to the 3-point intersection. As I crossed back the way we had just come, I looked over my shoulder again to see them in a driveway. For a moment, I felt the weight lift off my chest, thinking they had found their destination. But that was replaced by a sickening pit in my stomach to see them reverse and turn back around, now coming towards us again. I was horrified to see this, and it started to walk even faster, coming up to a jog at this point. I didn't want to panic or scare my little brother, so I never said a word this entire time. My brother was still completely sucked into his toy car and game with himself, now holding it in the air pretending it was flying. I was glad he didn't realize how scared I was, or that we were being followed. I just kept going forward, coming close to our street again and feeling insanely grateful that we had now made it very far. I kept looking behind us, and I saw them only a few feet behind us, now going very slowly again. The man in the passenger seat pointed right at us, and the driver nodded. My heart sank again, and I turned to head back to the stroller looking at my phone, and I activated the emergency call setting, quickly pressing 911. But I didn't press call, not knowing what I would say and wondering if I could possibly be overreacting to this situation. I just started to run, not looking back anymore. My brother started to shriek and laugh as we bolted closer and closer to our street. I had tears in my eyes as I imagined what could be in the back of that van. Were there more men back there, ready to jump out and tackle us to drag us into the back? Did they want to hurt us or maybe separate us? Did they just want me, or did they want my brother? My mind did not stop racing along with my feet as I pushed harder and harder, now turning the corner onto our street. I peeked back again quickly, and of course they still followed. My brother laughed so hard, shouting at me to go fast like a race car. Believe me, I really wish I were as fast as one at that moment. We got to our driveway and I told my brother to start unbuckling, which he did gladly. When we got to the back of our house, I looked one last time, and they sat there in the middle of the street. The car stopped right in front of our driveway. I pushed the stroller into the small gravel patch that sat at our back door. I grabbed my brother out, leaving the stroller where it was, and then carried him into the house, quickly locking the glass door behind us and pulling the sliding blinds over it. I made sure he was okay, which he was, and then I ran to our living room where I closed more blinds over the windows that looked out onto the street. I sat on the couch and pulled one aside, watching outside. The van was now gone, but I was not convinced. And the next 10 or so minutes, I watched the same van drive back and forth past my house, always slow and then quickly speeding away. I took out my phone and tried to get a picture of their license plate, or at least some of the numbers written down, but I could not get a good view from how far back from the road I was. I never saw this van again, but this memory will always haunt me, always keeping me aware of my surroundings. I really hope everyone listening to this does the same, because you never know who could be watching or stalking you. Do not ever assume the best in any stranger, and never be polite to a stranger making you feel unsafe or uncomfortable. Trust me, their hurt feelings are a lot better than you getting hurt, or worse. Stay safe out there, everyone. Three weeks ago, this guy I knew from elementary school suddenly had messaged me on Facebook. He wanted to know if he saw me at McDonald's that day. I replied that I didn't see him, which was the truth. A few days later, he had tried reconnecting with me by asking, "What's up?" I didn't respond to him right away. I was either busy or tired. A couple of days later, he had sent me a barrage of vicious messages, threatening to rip my head off and break my neck in half. He somehow knew my address, which he says he got from a mutual friend. Apparently, he has a list of my closest friends and relatives, and he intends to put a bullet in each of their brains, all while leaving me alive to suffer in pain. When I got them that night, I was quite bothered by it, and I deactivated my Facebook. He then got my cell number and continued his harassment. I told him that I was very put off by his belligerence, that I never had anything against him before that day, and that I sincerely hoped he would get the help that he needed. I blocked his number immediately thereafter. He then called me via his home phone to ask if I was scared. I told him that I just wanted to put this whole situation behind me and move on. Over the next week, I kept getting phone calls from all sorts of different places, most of which were immediately hung up when I answered. The only one where he actually responded was from a local pizzeria, in which he pretended to be a dispatcher updating the status of my non-existent order. I heard him getting called out for it in the background. He had also been sending Facebook messages to my friends, asking them to forward his apologies to me. They were also harassed by him. A few nights ago, I had a large rock thrown through my bedroom window. This was the point at which I stopped living in denial and did what I should have done right after getting the death threats. I told my parents and got in touch with the police. Yesterday, I learned that he was arrested and taken into custody for threats of harm and criminal harassment. You can imagine that it came as a relief to me, but I'm still not feeling any better. For the past several days, I've been way too scared to leave my house alone, and even when I'm with somebody else, I get extremely nervous. The police department referred to me to a psychologist that specializes in victims of harassment. I already had a psychologist for my depression and social anxiety, but they insisted that I go see this woman. I've not gone to school or work since the rock went through my window, and I'm having serious thoughts about dropping out of both. I honestly thought that I was doing a lot better than I was before, but this whole situation has thrown me right back into the dark abyss of clinical depression. I don't want to waste away because of this, but I also don't feel like I'm ready to return to my normal day-to-day life. I don't know what to do. I've never told this story to anyone other than my closest friends, but this felt like a good outlet to finally get it out of my chest publicly. There's something called the 6 degrees of separation theory, which basically states that everyone in the world is separated by at most 6 steps. Well, I'm separated from Trent Reznor, the 9 Inch Nails lead singer, by just 1 step, and it was due to a stalker. Allow me to explain. Back in 2006, I was living in Atlanta, Georgia. and I had just joined a pretty particular punk band, which mixed a very loud sound with cabaret-like visuals. We never made it big, but our act was appealing enough that it got us the attention of many people. One of them was a strange girl who was always chain-smoking, had a weird aura to herself, and who was always wearing a jacket on her shoulders, meaning her arms were not in the sleeves, and who eventually said that she wanted to be our manager. She said that she was friends with Slash from Guns N' Roses, that she had managed a couple of bands when she used to live in New Orleans and whatnot, so we decided to hear her out. Our band was sorta crazy, so drugs passed around freely in our parties. This girl, she told us her name was Christy something, would provide us with party favors sometimes. She would tell us that she was worth $2 million, that she had 5 cars, that she worked in this luxury building and had a huge house somewhere in the suburbs. The thing is, she was always picking cigarette butts from the streets and smoking the filters like she was a homeless person. Something about her just didn't particularly click with me. She always came to see us in a sort of fancy SUV, so we went along with her stories for the most part. Well, eventually Christy fell hard for me, told me that she was divorcing her husband and that she wanted to be with me. I was intrigued by her, and so I started testing all of her stories. I asked to visit her at the office, and she would always make excuses as to why I couldn't, until eventually she told me her office had closed down and that they were looking for a new space. I asked her why she was using the same car if she had like 5, and again, excuses and more excuses. I had asked to visit her at her huge house, and same thing. She would come up with reasons as to why she couldn't have me for a visit, mostly that her husband was still there and whatnot. I started to get really sick of all of her excuses, and eventually confronted her that I thought that she was a big fat liar. She got desperate, started to make more excuses, and I just told her to get lost. She had had a previous fight with some of my bandmates before, so she had already been discarded as our prospective manager. She started calling me every day asking to see me. I would constantly tell her no, until one day she'd showed up to my house around 5 a.m., apparently fully wasted. She said that she had picked up this guy friend of hers to go to a party, but that he was too drunk and that he was now passed out in her car, and that she didn't know what to do with them. I looked across the street and I saw no one in her car, and she said it was because this guy was lying down. I didn't really feel like bothering and going to her car to check it out. Well, she eventually started crying, and I felt bad enough for her that I let her come into my living room. It was at this point that she took off her jacket, and for the first time ever, I realized that she was missing her entire left arm. I was already giddy by her showing up at my house drunk and all, that I didn't even dare to ask how that happened. I know this has nothing to do with my story, but it was something that just added to the already weirded out atmosphere. I hung out with her for a while. At this point, I'd started really doubting that she was actually drunk. I gave her coffee, told her to please never show up at my house like that ever again, and eventually I told her to just drop the guy at a Waffle House and then just go home. It might not have been the most responsible thing to tell someone in that state to drive, but I just wanted the whole damn thing to be over. And like I said, I felt that she was acting drunk the whole time, and she seemed pretty okay to drive. She eventually left, and that was it for the night. The next day, again, she had started stalking me by my phone, to the point that I'd just stopped picking up. I worked early hours, and she would call me at 2 or 3 a.m. completely drunk. I eventually got sick of it all, and I told her to stay away from me and to never call me again. She complied, and for about a week, it seemed like the whole thing was history. Around 6 days later, she had called me again when I was at work. I started telling her that she wasn't supposed to call me, but she said that she could finally invite me to her house and that she wanted me to come visit her. All sorts of red flags went up for me, so of course I told her to forget about it, and then I just hung up on her. She again started calling me at late hours, to the point that I just had to turn off my phone at night, otherwise I would never get a good night's rest. I remember that it was a Friday. After waking up, I had a voicemail on my phone left at around 2 a.m. I checked it out, and it was her saying,
"Hi Max, I just took 200 pills and I've been drinking all night.
I just wanted to say goodbye and that I love you. Good luck with the rest of your life." Needless to say, I got totally weirded out. I was so sick of her lies, I just deleted the message, completely assuming it was one of her ploys to get me to call her. I decided to forget about it and just went to work. Next Tuesday after that, I got another voicemail from her phone, but this time it was a guy's voice.
"Hi Max, this is Christy's husband. I'm calling her friends in her contacts list to let them know that she had passed away last Friday. And well, we're going to be doing a memorial for her in downtown Atlanta tomorrow. If you want to go, please call me back so I can give you the address."
I can't even explain how I felt at that point. I was shocked, and I tried to evade the news by thinking that this was just some guy that Christy had manipulated into calling me, just to get me somewhere at some time. But of course, the whole situation didn't make much sense to me. This guy eventually called another one of my bandmates whose name was in Christy's contact list as well. I had told my band about this entire situation, so my bandmate, who had been suspicious of this girl for a while, had started prying this guy for more info. We eventually learned that she used a fake name with us the whole time, that her real name was Amber Applebaum, and that she was using a made-up name because she had been in trouble with the law. We Googled her, and sure enough, it turns out that she had stalked Trent Reznor in the past and even managed to steal his credit card information. She was even arrested for it. I was stunned at this point, really unsure of what to do next. We never went to the memorial. We were just way too suspicious to do it. To this day, I still don't know if this girl committed suicide for real or if the whole thing was just a sham to get me into some trouble. But since I never heard from her again, I doubt it. Or maybe she's been using a fake name ever since and decided to just move on with her life. I'll never really know, but it's definitely the worst way to get 1 degree of separation with someone famous. I got rid of my cell phone after that, and it took me 3 years until I felt okay enough to get a new one. I really never want to go through something like that ever again. I'm a university student currently in my 3rd year, and I have 1 more year to go. In my first year, I had met this guy in a class that I eventually dropped out of because I was failing. We became friends really quickly, and he would always ask me what I'd be doing after class, and we'd hang out quite a bit. Before I go any further, I just want to make it clear as day that this guy and I were only friends, never an item. But as we were hanging out, I'd started to notice that he was just a really awful person, and he would say really awful things to me and about other people just to be funny or get a reaction out of me. Once he found out that I'm half Asian, he had started to make really racist Asian jokes to me sort of on a regular basis, saying that I love eating dogs. He would also point out random people outside of class and say things like,
"Look, that guy's fat, but his friend's really skinny,"
and would call random people bad names whilst pointing at them. After making fun of people, he would joke about himself being a beta male. I don't even know why, by the way. It got so bad he called this guy I know a dick. I told him that I knew that guy, and all he said was,
"Well, you know all the dicks then, so what does that make me?"
After that, I had stopped talking to them, and he knew that I didn't want to be around his ass anymore. As mentioned previously, I dropped out of the class we were in because I was failing. But if I'm being completely honest with myself, I was sort of happy that I wasn't doing well in the class so I could just leave and not have to deal with them. However, as soon as I dropped out of the class, so about a day or 2 later when I stopped showing up, he had started following me. This is where the real bullshit begins. Back then, my friends and I would chill in the library in the same spot. At the time, I had a big group of friends, and all of them knew what had happened. He began to walk past our little booth area about 5 to 6 times a day for the whole week, until he eventually got me alone. I felt someone staring at me from behind, and it was him, smiling down at me. He pulled up a chair and started talking to me like nothing had happened. I told him I dropped out, and he was telling me about the course. I just wanted him to leave, but I didn't have the strength to tell him to screw off, so I waited for him to go. He did, and he patted my head before he went away. After this ordeal, he would walk past my friends and I every day roughly 8 to 9 times. I would move upstairs, he'd do it there. I'd go back to where I was before, he'd be there. This went on for the entire trimester. Second trimester begins. Things have happened and I'm now in a relationship, and I blocked him on Facebook during the holidays. He didn't know I was in a relationship until he saw my man and I holding hands, laughing and kissing. This was when things escalated. He started showing up to my lectures. In one of my classes, he had a friend in there who had led him to me. He had sat next to me and started talking about how much of a great person he is and how much he's changed. At this point, I told him to leave me alone, but he said nothing and continued to sit there with his friend and began talking with him. He then started going to the other side of the city to catch the same bus that my friends and I would catch, and he would kind of do the same crap to them too, all the while doing what my friends called doing the rounds in the library. Summer school comes, we're in the same class. He tries talking to me all the time, and once caught me in the elevator and tried talking to me there. I ignored him and probably hurt his feelings, because after that he didn't do anything for a while. Second year, I had started volunteering at the University Art Gallery. His name is already on the list. When we were friends, I told him all about how much I love art and art history, and that I wanted to major in it and maybe volunteer at the gallery. He showed no interest in that kind of thing, so I was surprised and was pretty pissed to see his name there. Although it could be coincidental, aside from the creepy stares, nothing had happened. Third year, this is where I currently am. I changed my major, so did he, and now we're in the same class. Every lecture he waits for me to go in first to see where I'll sit, and he follows me and sits in front every time. I sit on different sides of the room every day, and each time he follows me. He started coming into my tutorial sessions once he found out what time it was and continued to go there. I eventually made the move to email both my lecturer and tutor about his behavior, and my lecturer was so kind that he got me in contact with my university support staff. I had a meeting with her and told her everything, and even asked if his behavior is what you'd call stalking. She said that it was, and told me to keep a log entry of everything he does, and write down the date, time, and what happened. I'm currently doing that. I have my final exam for this paper next week, and we're probably going to be in the same exam room since our last names are pretty close in the alphabet. I'm not too bothered by this, but I'm just praying that he doesn't bother me, that or follow me out of the university. I'm a 17-year-old female working as a cashier at a popular thrift store. I've been there for approximately 8 months, and I love my job and my coworkers. A common thing I've noticed is that unfortunately, anytime a new younger female cashier starts working, she will be hit on by plenty of older guys, and I was no exception to that. I've never had to deal with creepy or weird customers until this job, and I worked in the food industry before, so maybe that's why. We of course get a handful of regulars, and while I've had a few creepy older guys hit on me before, one even looking me up on Facebook for my name tag and messaging me, there's a regular that comes in all the time. I want to say that he's in his late 40s, and while he's always nice, my manager has pointed out his obsession with me. I was called in the office the other day so she could show me how he acts and such with the surveillance cameras. Just a list of what's been pointed out to me that I didn't really notice before. He comes in at roughly the same time I'm working every day, and apparently doesn't show up on my days off. I work closing most of the time, so he comes in around 6 p.m. When he comes in, he will immediately look at the register I almost always work at, and will do a double take looking for me. He usually buys one bullshit item, spending about 15 minutes in the store usually. My manager has pointed out that he needs to buy something, or else he knows it'll look weird. Every time without fail, he'll go to my register, and even when I was on the floor doing recovery, he had asked me to check him out because I'm his favorite cashier. If there's a shorter line, it doesn't matter. He will stay at my register waiting and watching me. He lingers around after buying something just to talk to me, showing me things on his phone, making sure there's no one else in the line. The manager said he approaches me when I'm alone so he can talk to me without holding up a line. He's commented on my hickeys that I failed to cover up before on my neck, making weird remarks here and there. He says that he usually checks because there's always about 1 to 2. He said that I would look good as a blonde, which isn't inherently weird, but paired with everything else, I guess. When I wasn't wearing makeup, he would say something like, "You seem out of sorts recently." I've started wearing makeup again recently, and he's commented saying that he likes that I'm back to my old self. I've noticed weird flirty remarks with him, but always brushed it off because customers are always kinda weird and I deal with that often anyway. He'll lean over the register counter to talk to me closer, just his body language in general. He does a double take when he leaves too, keeping his eyes on me. These are just things that have been pointed out to me by my manager. She's like a protective mother with me and says every time he comes in she watches the cameras just to keep an eye on him. I watched the surveillance with her, and after all of that piled up, I'm starting to be way more weary. For now, all we can do is just sit and watch. We really have no reason to kick him out of the store or anything, and my general manager, being the dipshit that he is, wouldn't care anyway. It's just another customer to him. He wouldn't let me change my name tag after I told him about a customer looking me up on Facebook, saying it's policy, and generally making me feel like I'm an idiot, like I'm overreacting. I'm opening tomorrow morning, so I doubt I'll see him. He probably came in today, but I requested today off, so he's probably confused with my schedule right now. I don't know. The donation guys and I are pretty close, at least with 3 of them. I'm told to call them up front if he starts being weird, kinda using a code phrase that's inconspicuous enough that the guy doesn't realize. So not much of an update since it's only been a couple of days and I'm on my 15-minute break at work. I posted a comment on the original post yesterday, so in case you haven't seen it, I think it's possible that he knows what car I drive. He was at my work this morning even though I always close, and I have asked my boyfriend who also works with me if it's true that he never shows up when I'm off. He says yes, it's true. I don't think he knows my schedule, but he might know my car and sees it in the parking lot. He always parks out of the store's outdoor camera view, so I still don't know what car he drives. The general manager was made aware by the manager in this post, but he didn't interact with me much today because I was never alone at the register or on the floor. I was training the new cashier today. He was there a lot longer than usual. I'm assuming because he was waiting for a time when I was alone and had no customers. I think he gave up when he realized I would be training for the majority of my shift and seeing how busy it was. Okay, so I have another update. Since I worked opening yesterday, he came in before my shift at work, probably assuming I would be opening again. I'm working close shift tonight. Apparently he came in earlier and saw the new cashiers, so he actually ended up asking one of them, "New cashiers? Who quit?" Probably thinking I quit. It's only 4:33. He would usually come in around 6 o'clock if I'm closing. Just waiting to see if he shows up for the second time today. I doubt he will since he might think I don't work today. My manager and I are going to keep a log of what time he comes in and leaves. I'm going to keep his phone number saved in my notes so I can look him up and hopefully find his name and other information. I will possibly keep my phone on the counter to voice record what he says. I really wish I could record him in person, but it would be too obvious. If I get shown more security footage, I will video that instead. I have more information. Probably won't post many updates after this one, since I don't know if anything else is even going to happen. Here's what happened tonight. Stalker came in around 1 p.m. today, an hour and a half before my shift had started. Apparently he bought one thing and asked if someone quit because I wasn't there. After buying the item, he walked out, then came back a few minutes later, walked around the store looking for something, headed to the back, looked around some more, and then went to the restroom. Our public restroom is in the employees only area, so it's not unusual. What is unusual is him coming back in and looking around. An hour before the store closed, he came in again. I freaked out because I really wasn't expecting to see him. I headed to the back, told my manager and the donation attendants. The manager told everyone to go out on the floor, have a few pretend to be shoppers, and keep watch. She kept watch in the office. I needed to stay at the register to get his phone number and to record our conversation. I'm 99% sure he knew he was being watched. He actually tried to leave my line and get in the other cashier's, but since my manager was watching, she called her to the office before he got checked out. He checked out with me, talking as he usually does. But I'm sure he was uncomfortable since I was obviously anxious, and we had a coworker's girlfriend out front to take a picture of what he drives. I have 2 separate voice recordings. The first being him grabbing a card and making small talk with me as he walks by the register. The next, me checking him out. A coworker's girlfriend took a picture of his car, and he parked in the parking lot of the store next door. I'm assuming to stay out of the camera's view, but I'm not sure. She said that he circled the parking lot 4 times before leaving. Not sure why. I went home and I told my parents everything that's been going on. I gave my dad his phone number to find information, and he found an address. He drove about an hour to get to the car and see it lined up. Lo and behold, the cars he took pictures of matched what the coworker's girlfriend saw. The one she saw earlier had a back license plate. No front one, I'm assuming. We have his license plate now, and we even know his address. His address is actually about an hour away from my job, so I'm assuming he works nearby. Nothing pulled up on the sex offender registry with his name. Everyone's being watchful now. Sorry for not updating on how everything turned out. I'm happy to say he hasn't come in for the past few weeks, and I hope I won't have to see him again. I would get really anxious when he came in, hide in the bag, take my medication, and stay away from the register. I think that he realized we were watching him, so hopefully that's the end of that and he's not on business or something. I feel so much safer at work now. This really could have gone horribly, but I was so happy that his behavior was pointed out to me so I could take the precautions. If you're facing a similar situation, take all of the necessary measures. Don't skip out on your safety. You never know what could happen. Hey everyone, hope you all enjoyed today's stories. Consider stopping by on my Kick streams sometimes. Now that I've officially face revealed, I'm streaming multiple times a week on Kick. And yeah, it'd be pretty cool to have you there. It's a pretty fun time, so consider stopping by. Anyways, hope you all have a good day. And remember to always stay on.